The blood had dried in Grace Zimmerman's left ear 3 months before she stumbled into Pecos, Texas, with nothing but a canvas bag and the kind of fear that makes a person sleep with one eye open. She had walked most of the way from Santa Fe, taking rides when she could trust the driver, which was rare, and sleeping in abandoned barns when the night got too cold to keep moving. The landscape had changed from high desert to rolling plains, and now she stood on the dusty main street of a town that looked like every other speck of civilization in West Texas in 1881. But it was far enough from Robert Henley that maybe, just maybe, she could breathe again. The sun beat down merciless and white, making the false-fronted buildings shimmer like they might dissolve into nothing. Grace shifted her bag to her other shoulder and touched her left ear without meaning to, a habit she had developed since that last night. When Robert had hit her so hard, the world went silent on one side. The doctor in Santa Fe, the one who had stitched up her split eyebrow and set her broken rib, had told her the hearing might come back. Might. That was 3 months ago, and the silence on her left side remained complete, a reminder that some things broken do not mend the way they should. She needed work. She needed a place to sleep. She needed to disappear into the rhythm of a town where nobody knew her name or cared where she came from. The hotel looked too expensive, its painted sign advertising rooms for $1 a night, which might as well have been 100 for all the money Grace had. Next to it stood a general store, and beyond that, a saloon with music spilling out into the afternoon heat. She walked past them all, her boots kicking up dust, until she saw a smaller establishment with a hand-painted sign that read Miller's Boarding House. The woman who answered her knock was maybe 60, with iron gray hair, pulled back severe, and eyes that took in everything about Grace in one sweeping glance. She saw the fading bruises Grace knew. She saw the way Grace held herself, tight and careful, like sudden movements might shatter something. But the woman just nodded and said, $2 a week, meals included. You working? Looking, Grace said. I can clean, cook, mend. I am good with numbers. Speak up, girl. You are mumbling. Grace felt her face heat. Sorry. I said I can clean and cook, and I am good with numbers. She made her voice louder, but it felt like shouting, like drawing attention she did not want. The woman studied her another moment. Martha Miller, you got a name? Grace Zimmerman. You running from something or someone, Grace Zimmerman. The directness of it caught Grace off guard. She could lie, but something about Martha Miller's face suggested lies would not work here. Someone, she said finally. But I will not bring trouble. I just need to work and keep my head down. Martha opened the door wider. Trouble always finds folks whether they bring it or not. But you look like you have had enough of it. Come on in. I will give you 3 days free while you find work. Then the $2 a week starts. Fair? Relief flooded through Grace, so sudden she felt dizzy. More than fair, thank you. The room Martha showed her was small, barely big enough for the narrow bed and washstand, but it had a window that looked out onto the scrubby grassland behind the town, and the sheets smelled like lye soap and sunshine. Grace set down her bag and sat on the bed, her hands shaking now that she had stopped moving. She had made it. She was 200 miles from Robert Henley and his fists and his voice that could turn sweet as honey or sharp as broken glass depending on how much he had drunk. She was safe. The shaking did not stop for a long time. By the next morning, Grace had walked the length of Pecos twice, asking at every establishment if they needed help. The general store did not. The hotel had a full staff. The saloon owner looked her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl and offered her a job that she knew had nothing to do with serving drinks. She walked out before he finished talking. The seamstress already had an apprentice. The blacksmith laughed at her. By noon, the hope that had carried her through the morning was wearing thin. She was standing outside the telegraph office, trying to decide if it was worth asking, when a man on horseback nearly ran her down. Grace jumped back, but not before the horse shied, and the rider had to grab his hat to keep it from flying off. The horse danced sideways, and the man spoke low and calm until it settled. Sorry, miss. the man said. And then he said it again, and Grace realized he was looking straight at her face when he spoke, his eyes level with hers even though he was mounted. Did not see you there. Are you hurt? I am fine, Gillis, Grace said, but she had jumped away to her right, instinctively turning her good ear toward danger, and now she felt foolish. The man swung down from his horse in one easy motion. He was tall, lean in the way of men who spend their lives outdoors, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that needed cutting. His eyes were gray or maybe blue. It was hard to tell in the bright sunlight. He looked maybe 25, perhaps a year or two older than Grace herself. Owen Zeller, he said. I work the ranch just outside town. Again, I am sorry. Dusty here usually has better manners. The horse, a big roan gelding, lowered its head and snuffled at Owen's shoulder. Grace found herself almost smiling, the first real smile she had felt in months. Grace Zimmerman, and truly I am fine. I should have been paying more attention. Owen studied her face for a moment, and Grace saw the exact instant he noticed the fading bruises, the yellowish-green marks that no amount of powder could quite hide. Something changed in his expression, a tightening around his eyes, but he did not ask. Instead, he said, You new to Pecos? Arrived yesterday, looking for work. What kind of work? Grace lifted her chin. Anything honest. I can clean, cook, do books, mend, work in a garden. I learn fast. Owen was quiet for a moment, his hand on his horse's neck. Then he said, The Rocking M, that is the ranch where I work. We need someone to help with the cooking and the house. Mrs. Henderson has been doing it, but her daughter just had a baby over in Fort Stockton, and she wants to go help for a few months. Would that interest you? It was almost too good to be true, which made Grace immediately suspicious. She had learned in the hardest way possible that things that seemed too good usually had teeth. What is the catch? Owen blinked. No catch. It is honest work for honest pay. Mrs. Henderson gets $30 a month plus room and board. I expect the foreman would offer you the same if you can do the work. It is a big ranch, 15 hands to feed 3 times a day, plus the foreman and the owner when he is there. Lots of cooking and cleaning. $30 a month. Grace felt her breath catch. That was more money than she had ever made in her life. With Robert, she had not been allowed to work at all. He had said a man provided for his woman, but what he had really meant was that he wanted her where he could see her, isolated on his failed little homestead with nobody to tell about the bruises. $30 a month was freedom. That was the ability to save, to have something of her own. When could I start? She asked. Come out tomorrow morning. I will tell the foreman, Mr. Briggs, to expect you. Ranch is 5 miles west on the main road. You cannot miss it. Big gate with the Rocking M brand. Be there at sunrise, and Mrs. Henderson can show you what needs doing. Grace nodded, then remembered he might not have seen it if he had looked away, and said, Yes, thank you. I will be there. Owen tipped his hat to her, a gesture so old-fashioned and courteous that it made something in Grace's chest ache. Men could be gentle. She had forgotten that. Robert had made her forget. Owen mounted up with the same easy grace and rode off down the street, the big roan's hooves kicking up little puffs of dust. Grace stood there for a long moment, watching him go, and tried not to hope too hard. Hope was dangerous. Hope could get crushed like everything else. But the next morning, she walked the 5 miles to the Rocking M Ranch just as the sun was breaking over the flat horizon, and Mrs. Henderson, a comfortable woman with kind eyes and flour on her apron, showed her around the big kitchen and the bunkhouse and the main house where the owner stayed when he was not in Dallas on business. The foreman, a gruff man named Briggs with a tobacco-stained beard, asked her a few questions, seemed satisfied with her answers, and hired her on the spot. You start today, he said. Mrs. Henderson is leaving tomorrow, so she will teach you what she can. You bunk in the small room off the kitchen. Meals for the hands are at 6 in the morning, noon, and 6 at night. You keep the main house clean, Do the wash on Mondays and help with anything else that needs doing. We all work hard here, but we are fair. You do your job, you will be treated right. Any questions? Grace shook her head, then caught herself. No, sir, thank you. That day passed in a blur of activity. Mrs. Henderson talked constantly, pointing out where things were kept, how much food to make for the hands, which men had preferences or allergies, how to work the big cast iron stove, when to order supplies from town. Grace tried to absorb it all, but she kept having to ask Mrs. Henderson to repeat things, to speak up, to face her when talking. Finally, Mrs. Henderson stopped in the middle of explaining something about the root cellar and said, "You have trouble hearing, girl?" There was no judgment in her voice, just curiosity. Grace felt her shoulders tense anyway. "My left ear," she admitted. "I cannot hear from it. If you stay on my right side or face me when you talk, I do better." Mrs. Henderson nodded slowly. "Accident!" Something like that. The older woman did not push, just adjusted how she stood so Grace could see her face better and went on with the lesson. By the end of the day, Grace's head was spinning and her feet ached, but she had made biscuits for the evening meal that the ranch hands had eaten without complaint, and she had a job and a place to sleep and $30 a month coming. That night, alone in the small room off the kitchen, Grace lay in the narrow bed and listened to the silence on her left side and the sounds of the ranch on her right, the distant lowing of cattle and the creak of the windmill and the low voices of men talking outside the bunkhouse. She felt safer than she had in years. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that Grace clung to like a lifeline. She woke before dawn to start the breakfast, feeding 15 hungry ranch hands and whatever others might be around. She cleaned the dishes, started the bread, swept the floors, did the wash, made lunch, cleaned again, started dinner, cleaned again. The work was endless and exhausting, and she loved every minute of it because it was hers. She earned it. Nobody could take it from her. The ranch hands were a mixed group, some young and boisterous, some older and quiet, all of them respectful in a way that surprised her. They said please and thank you. They scraped their own plates into the slop bucket. They did not grab or leer or make her feel like something to be used. Owen Zeller was among them, and Grace noticed that he always sat where she could see him at meals, always faced her directly when he spoke, always made sure she could read his lips if the noise in the dining hall got too loud. She did not think much of it at first, assumed it was just coincidence or his natural way. But after the third or fourth time, she realized he was doing it on purpose. He had noticed her bad ear, had understood without her explaining, and was adjusting how he interacted with her so she would not struggle. The realization made her throat tight. Such a small thing, such a simple kindness, and yet it meant more than she could say. One afternoon, maybe a month after she started, Grace was in the kitchen making apple pies when Owen came in through the back door, hat in hand. "Mrs. Briggs needs someone to run to town for supplies," he said, and she noticed he stopped just inside the doorway, where she could see him clearly from where she stood at the counter. "Would you like to come along? Might be nice to get off the ranch for a few hours." Grace wiped her hands on her apron. "I should finish these pies. They can wait, cannot they? Or I can wait for you to finish. No rush." She wanted to say no, wanted to stay safe in the kitchen where everything was predictable. But another part of her, the part that remembered she was only 23 and used to like seeing new things, said yes before she could think better of it. "Let me clean up and I will be ready in 10 minutes. The wagon ride to town was pleasant, the weather fine and cool for West Texas in October. Owen drove the team with easy competence, pointing out landmarks, telling her stories about the ranch and the area. He kept his face turned partly toward her the whole time, even though it must have been awkward, so she could hear him. She noticed but said nothing, too grateful to risk making him self-conscious about it. In town, they loaded the wagon with flour and sugar and coffee and all the other things on Mrs. Briggs's list. Owen introduced Grace to the shopkeeper as Miss Zimmerman from the Rocking M, his voice carrying a note of pride, like she was someone important. It made her stand a little straighter. They were loading the last sack of cornmeal when a man across the street caught Grace's eye. He was tall, dark-haired, wearing a black coat too heavy for the weather. For one heart-stopping moment, she thought it was Robert, and her whole body went rigid with terror. The sack of cornmeal slipped from her hands and split open on the wagon bed, golden meal spilling everywhere. "Grace?" Owen's voice seemed to come from far away. "Grace, what is wrong?" She could not breathe, could not move. The man in the black coat turned, and she saw his face was nothing like Robert's, younger and rounder, a stranger. Not him, not Robert. She was safe. "Grace." Owen's hand was on her arm, gentle, and she flinched before she could stop herself. He pulled back immediately, holding his hands up where she could see them. "You are safe. I am not going to hurt you. Can you hear me?" "You are safe." The words penetrated slowly. She dragged in a breath, then another. Her hands were shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought I saw someone. Someone I knew." Owen's gray eyes were steady on hers. "The someone you are running from?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "He is not here," Owen said quietly. "And if he were, he would have to go through me and every other hand on the Rockingham to get to you. You understand that? You are safe." Grace felt tears burning in her eyes and blinked them back hard. "I am sorry about the cornmeal." "To hell with the cornmeal." Owen said it with such vehemence that she almost laughed, a strange choked sound. "Come on, let us get you back to the ranch." The ride back was quiet. Grace kept her hands fisted in her skirt to stop their shaking, angry at herself for falling apart over nothing, over a stranger in a black coat. But when they pulled up to the ranch house, Owen set the brake and turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "I do not know your story," he said, "and you do not have to tell me. But I know fear when I see it, and I know what marks like the ones you were wearing when you got here mean. If you ever need anything, if you ever feel unsafe or need help, or just need someone to talk to, you come find me, understand?" Grace swallowed hard. "Why would you do that? You do not know me." "Because it is the right thing to do," Owen said simply. "Because nobody should have to be that afraid. And because I would like to think someone would do the same for my sister if she needed it." Something in Grace's chest cracked open, just a little. She had been so alone for so long, had trusted no one, and needed no one because needing people gave them power to hurt you. But Owen's eyes were steady and honest, and she found herself saying, "Thank you. That means more than you know." He smiled, just a small upturn of his mouth, and climbed down to unload the supplies. Grace helped, and together they carried everything into the kitchen, sweeping up the spilled cornmeal and putting away the rest. They worked in comfortable silence, and Grace realized with some surprise that she did not feel anxious around him. She felt safe. It was a novel feeling. As October turned to November and the days grew shorter and cooler, Grace found herself watching for Owen without meaning to. She noticed when he came in for meals, noticed the way he always made sure she could see him, noticed how he smiled when he thanked her for the food. She noticed the way he treated his horse and the way he helped the younger hands with their work and the way he could make old Briggs laugh with some dry comment. She noticed everything about him, and that scared her almost as much as the thought of Robert finding her. She had sworn after she left that she would never let another man get close, never trust like that again, never be vulnerable. But Owen was making it hard to keep that promise to herself. One evening, after the dinner dishes were done and the kitchen cleaned, Grace walked out to the porch to cool off from the heat of the stove. The sun was setting, painting the western sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, and the air smelled like dust and grass and horses. She leaned against the porch railing and let herself enjoy the moment, the peace of it. Beautiful, is it not? She turned to find Owen coming up the steps, moving slowly so he would not startle her. He had learned that too, she realized. Had learned not to come up on her left side where she could not hear him, had learned to move deliberately, so she always knew where he was. It is, she agreed. I never get tired of these sunsets. Owen leaned against the railing beside her, close enough to talk but far enough that they were not touching. How are you settling in? Job working out all right? Better than all right. Best job I have ever had. Even with Briggs grumbling at you? Grace laughed. He grumbles at everyone. I think he would be disappointed if he did not have something to complain about. Owen grinned. That is true enough. He was quiet for a moment, watching the sunset, then said, Can I ask you something? You can tell me to mind my own business if you want. Grace tensed but nodded. Your ear, the one that does not hear. Was it him? The man you are running from? She should have expected the question, should have prepared an answer, but she had not. The truth came out before she could stop it. Yes, the last time. He hit me so hard something broke inside. The doctor said the bones in my ear were damaged, maybe permanently. Owen's hands tightened on the railing. He should be in jail. He should be a lot of things. Grace looked down at her own hands. But he is not. He is a respected man in Santa Fe, owns property, has friends. I am just a woman who left him. If I had gone to the law, they would have sent me back. That is not right. No, Grace agreed quietly. It is not. But it is how things are. Owen turned to face her, and in the fading light his eyes looked very blue. I am glad you left him. I am glad you are here. The intensity in his voice made Grace's heart beat faster. Owen, I know it is too soon, he said quickly. I know you are not looking for anything, but I need you to know that I care about you. Grace, I think you are brave and strong, and the best thing that has happened to this ranch in a long time, and not just because your biscuits are better than Mrs. Henderson's. That last bit was said with a small smile, trying to lighten the moment. Grace felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. She could step back, could keep herself safe and closed off and alone. Or she could step forward into something that terrified her, but also made her feel more alive than she had in years. I care about you too, she whispered. But I am afraid. Of me? Of this? Of trusting again? Of getting hurt again? Owen reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was calloused from rain leather and rough work, warm and solid. I cannot promise you will never get hurt again, he said. Life does not work that way, but I can promise I will never be the one to hurt you. I will never raise a hand to you, or make you afraid, or do any of the things he did. That is not who I am. Grace looked at their joined hands, his tan fingers wrapped around her smaller ones. It felt like a promise, like safety, like maybe hope was not as dangerous as she thought. I want to believe that. Then believe it. Give me a chance to prove it. We can go slow as you need. I am not going anywhere. She raised her eyes to his face, saw the sincerity there, the patience. Owen Zeller was a good man. She had seen it in how he worked, how he treated others, how he had adjusted his entire way of communicating just to make things easier for her. Maybe good men did exist. Maybe she was allowed to have one. All right, she said. Slow. Owen smiled, really smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Slow, he agreed. They stood there as the last light faded from the sky, holding hands on the porch, and Grace felt something she had not felt in years. She felt hopeful. The weeks that followed were a strange, sweet time. Owen courted her in small ways, respectful ways that never pushed or demanded. He brought her wildflowers he found on the range, sat with her on the porch in the evenings to talk, helped her carry heavy loads without being asked. He made her laugh with stories about the ranch and the hands, listened when she wanted to talk, and gave her space when she needed to be alone. He learned her moods, her limits, her fears, and adjusted himself around them with a patience that astounded her. And always, always, He faced her when he spoke. He positioned himself on her right side. He made sure she could see his mouth when he talked, and if the noise was too loud, he leaned closer or waited until they could move somewhere quieter. He never made her feel broken or less than. He just adapted, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Grace found herself falling for him a little more each day, and it terrified her and thrilled her in equal measure. One December afternoon, a rider came into the ranch at full gallop, horse lathered and the man shouting for Briggs. Grace was in the kitchen preparing dinner, but she heard the commotion and went to the window. The rider was waving a piece of paper, and Briggs was reading it with a deepening scowl. Owen came out of the barn, and Grace watched him talk to Briggs, then read the paper himself. His face went hard, and he looked toward the house, toward where he knew she would be working. Then he started walking fast toward the kitchen. Grace's stomach dropped. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Owen came through the door, breathing hard, and Grace felt her hands start to shake. "What is it?" she asked. "What happened?" "There is a man in town asking questions," Owen said, his voice tight. "Showed up this morning. Tall, dark hair, says he is looking for his wife who ran off. Says her name is Grace." The floor seemed to tilt under her feet. "Robert," she whispered. "He found me." "He hasn't found you yet," Owen said firmly. "He is asking around town, but nobody knows you are living out here except Martha Miller and the folks at the boarding house, and Martha will not say anything if you do not want her to. But Grace, you need to decide what you want to do. Do you want to hide? Do you want to face him? Do you want us to send him away?" Grace's mind was racing, panic clawing at her throat. 3 months. She had 3 whole months of peace, of feeling safe, of beginning to heal. And now Robert was here to drag her back to hell. "I am not going back," she said, and her voice came out stronger than she felt. "I am not going back to him. Ever." "You do not have to," Owen said. He stepped closer, his hands hovering like he wanted to touch her, but was not sure if he should. "Grace, you do not have to do anything you do not want to do. We can hide you. We can tell him you are not here. We can run him off the property. Whatever you need." Grace took a shaky breath. "What if he does not leave? What if he keeps looking? Then we keep him from finding you. This is a big ranch and Pecos is a small town. People here look after their own, and you are one of us now. But what if he does find me? What if he makes me go back?" Owen's jaw clenched. "He cannot make you do anything. You are not his property. And if he tries, he will have to deal with me. Owen, he is dangerous. He has a gun and he knows how to use it. I do not want you getting hurt because of me. I am not afraid of him." Owen's eyes were blazing now, fierce and protective. "And I am not letting him take you. Grace, you are staying here where you are safe. That is the end of it." Part of Grace wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle this herself, that she did not need a man to protect her. But the truth was she was terrified, and the idea of facing Robert alone made her want to throw up. And maybe, just maybe, letting someone help her was not weakness. Maybe it was just being smart. "All right," she said. "What do we do?" What they did was tell Briggs everything, and Briggs told the hands, and by nightfall, the entire Rocking M knew that Grace was in trouble and that they were all going to make sure she stayed safe. The men took turns keeping watch, made sure someone was always within shouting distance of the house, and spread the word to the neighboring ranches that if a stranger came around asking questions, they were to be sent on their way with no information. Robert stayed in Pecos for 3 days, asking questions, showing a photograph that must have been from before Grace left because she barely recognized herself in it. She looked softer in that picture, younger, less afraid. But Martha Miller did not recognize her from it, or so she told Robert. Neither did the shopkeeper, or the hotel owner, or anyone else. Grace Zimmerman might have passed through Pecos, they said, but if she did not stay. On the 3rd day, Robert gave up and rode out, heading east toward Fort Stockton. Grace watched from the window of the ranch house as Owen and two other hands rode into town to make sure he was really gone. They came back an hour later and confirmed he had left, but Owen's face was grim. He told the sheriff he would be back, Owen said when he found Grace in the kitchen. She was scrubbing a pot that was already clean, working out her nerves with a wire brush. He said you are his wife, and he has a legal right to you, and that if anyone is hiding you, they are breaking the law. Grace's hands stilled. Is that true? Owen's mouth was a thin line. Depends on how you look at it. Technically, if you two are married, he has certain legal rights. But you are not his property, Grace, no matter what the law says. And if he comes back, we will deal with it. How? The pot clattered into the sink. How will we deal with it, Owen? He is right. If we were married, the law is on his side. He can take me back and nobody will stop him. Were you married? Owen's voice was very quiet. Legally? Grace thought about it. Really thought about it. No, she said slowly. We had a ceremony. Just him and me and a man he said was a preacher. But there was no license, no witnesses. He said it was just as good, that we did not need the government's permission. I believed him because I was 18 and did not know better. Owen's expression cleared. Then you are not married. Not legally. Whatever claim he thinks he has, it is not valid. But he will say we are. He will lie. Let him. Without a marriage license, he cannot prove anything. And if he tries to take you by force, that is kidnapping, and the law will come down on him for that. Owen moved around the table so he was on her good side, facing her directly. Grace, listen to me. You are free. He has no claim on you. Whatever he convinced you of, whatever he made you believe, it was a lie. You are your own person, and you get to choose where you go and who you are with. Do you understand? Grace felt tears spill down her cheeks. I was so afraid. I thought if he found me, I would have to go back. Never, Owen said fiercely. You are never going back to him. I swear it. She believed him. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe it was naive. But she believed him. Owen had never lied to her, never tried to control her, never made her feel like anything but an equal. If he said she was safe, she was safe. Thank you, she whispered. Owen reached out slowly and wiped the tears from her face with his thumb, a gesture so gentle it made her heart ache. You do not have to thank me for doing the right thing. But she did thank him, and she kept thanking him in the days that followed as life slowly returned to normal. Robert did not come back. The hands stopped keeping watch quite so closely. Grace went back to cooking and cleaning and slowly, carefully, letting herself believe she might actually be safe. Christmas came, and the ranch celebrated with a big dinner and gifts exchanged in the bunkhouse. Owen gave Grace a shawl he had bought in town, soft wool dyed a deep blue that matched her eyes. Grace gave him a shirt she had sewn in secret, fitting it to his measurements from memory. He wore it every day after that, even though it was too nice for ranch work, and every time she saw him in it, she felt warm all over. They were sitting on the porch one evening in early January, wrapped in coats against the winter chill, when Owen said, I have been thinking. About what? Grace was leaning against his shoulder, a position that felt natural now after weeks of slowly increasing physical closeness. About us. About the future. He shifted so he could see her face. Grace, I know we said we would go slow, and I do not want to push you, but I need you to know that I am serious about you. About us. I am not courting you for fun or to pass the time. I am courting you because I want to marry you. Grace's heart jumped into her throat. Owen, you do not have to answer now, he said quickly. I am not asking yet. I am just telling you where I stand, so you know my intentions are honorable. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, I want you to be my wife. The real kind, with a license and witnesses and everything legal and binding. I want to build a life with you. I want to give you a home where you are always safe and always loved. I want all of it, Grace. She could not speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of what he was offering. A future, a real future, not just survival, but an actual life with someone who cared about her. It was everything she had thought she could never have. I want that too, she said finally, her voice shaking. I am not quite ready yet, but I want that too. With you. Owen's smile was like the sun coming out. Then we will wait until you are ready. I am a patient man. Grace kissed him then, leaning up to press her lips to his, tentative and sweet. Owen kissed her back carefully, like she was something precious that might break, and when they pulled apart, Grace was smiling. I think I am falling in love with you, she whispered. I know I am falling in love with you, Owen replied, and kissed her again. The winter passed slowly, cold and sometimes harsh, but Grace barely noticed. She was too happy, too caught up in the steady deepening of her relationship with Owen. They spent every spare moment together, talking and laughing and learning each other. Owen told her about his family in Missouri, about the sister he had mentioned and the parents he had left behind to make his own way. Grace told him about growing up in Kansas, about the parents she had lost to influenza when she was 16, about meeting Robert and thinking he was salvation when he was really damnation. Owen listened to all of it, the good and the bad, and never once made her feel judged or small. He just held her hand and told her she was the strongest person he knew, and Grace started to believe it. By the time spring rolled around, painting the Texas grassland in shades of green and gold, Grace knew she was ready. Ready to say yes, ready to build that future Owen had promised, ready to be his wife in truth and law. Owen asked her properly on a Sunday afternoon in April. He rode her out to a spot on the ranch where a small creek ran through a stand of cottonwood trees, the water clear and cool, and the trees just beginning to leaf out. He helped her down from the horse and got down on one knee in the grass, holding a ring he had bought in town, a simple gold band with a small blue stone. Grace Zimmerman, he said, looking up at her with those steady gray eyes, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving to you that love does not have to hurt? Will you build a home with me and let me stand by your side through whatever comes? Grace's vision blurred with tears, but they were good tears, happy tears. Yes, she said, yes, Owen, I will marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood up and kissed her there, under the cottonwoods, and Grace felt like she was finally home. They were married in May in the small church in Pecos, with Briggs and Martha Miller and all the ranch hands as witnesses. Grace wore a simple dress she had sewn herself, white muslin with blue ribbon at the waist, and Owen wore his best suit and the shirt she had made him. The preacher pronounced them man and wife, and when Owen kissed her, the whole congregation erupted in cheers. Afterwards, there was a party at the ranch, with food and music and dancing that lasted late into the night. Grace danced with Owen and with Briggs and with some of the hands, and she laughed until her sides hurt, and she could not remember ever being this happy in her entire life. When everyone finally went home or to bed, and Grace and Owen were alone in the small house Owen had built for them on the edge of the ranch property, Owen took her face in his hands and said, I love you, Grace Zeller. Grace Zeller. Her new name, a new life, a new beginning. I love you too, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Their wedding night was gentle and sweet, Owen taking his time, making sure she felt safe and cherished. He kissed her slowly and touched her carefully, and when she tensed up from old fears, he stopped and held her until she was ready to continue. He never pushed, never demanded, never took. He only gave, and Grace fell even more in love with him for it. In the morning, Grace woke up in Owen's arms and felt safe all the way to her bones. This was what love was supposed to be. This was what she had been searching for without knowing it. Not possession, not control, but partnership. Not fear, but trust. Not pain, but joy. The months that followed were blissfully ordinary. Grace kept her job cooking for the ranch, though now she lived in her own house with her husband instead of the little room off the kitchen. Owen worked his usual hours, coming home to her every evening, kissing her hello like he had been gone for years, instead of hours. They fell into a rhythm, a life, a marriage that was everything Grace had never dared to hope for. In the fall, Grace discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening after dinner, nervous about how he would react. They had not talked much about children, had been so focused on building their relationship that the future had seemed distant. But Owen's face lit up like Christmas morning. "A baby?" he said. "We are having a baby. In the spring, I think. April or May, if the doctor is right." Owen whooped and picked her up and spun her around, then set her down quickly, worried he had been too rough. "Are you all right? Is the baby all right? Should you be standing?" Grace laughed. "I am fine. We are fine. It is just a baby, Owen, not a catastrophe." "It is the best news I have ever heard," Owen said and kissed her soundly. The pregnancy was easier than Grace had feared, though the morning sickness in the early months was miserable. Owen hovered and fussed and brought her ginger tea and crackers, and Grace loved him for it even when she was annoyed by it. As her belly grew, Owen talked to it, telling the baby stories about the ranch and singing songs he remembered from his childhood. Grace would sit with her hands on her stomach, feeling the baby kick, and think about how lucky she was. In April, as the wildflowers bloomed across the Texas grassland, Grace went into labor. It was long and hard and painful, and there were moments when Grace was convinced she was going to die. But Owen stayed with her the whole time, holding her hand, wiping her face, telling her she was strong and brave, and that he loved her. And when the baby finally came, screaming and red-faced and perfect, Grace cried with relief and joy. "It is a boy," the midwife announced, wrapping the baby in a blanket and handing him to Grace. "A healthy baby boy." Grace looked down at her son, at his tiny fingers and scrunched up face, and felt her heart expand to a size she had not known was possible. "He is beautiful," she whispered. Owen leaned over her shoulder, his eyes wet. "He is perfect. You did so well, Grace. I am so proud of you." They named him James after Owen's father, and he was the most beloved baby in all of West Texas, if the way the ranch hands fussed over him was any indication. Grace brought him to the kitchen with her when she worked, and the men would take turns holding him and making silly faces to get him to smile. Owen was a devoted father, getting up with Grace for the night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, rocking James for hours when he was fussy. Watching Owen with their son, Grace thought about Robert and how different things could have been. If she had not left, if she had stayed, Robert would have eventually killed her, she was sure of it. And even if he had not, she would have lived in fear and misery, and any children she had would have grown up watching their father hurt their mother. That was no life. This, what she had now, this was life, this was joy. James was 6 months old when Robert came back. It was a hot day in October, the kind where the sun beat down merciless and everything shimmered in the heat. Grace was in the house with James, trying to keep him cool and entertained, when she heard horses outside. She glanced out the window and felt her blood turn to ice. Robert Henley was riding up to the house, flanked by 2 men she did not recognize. He looked older, harder, meaner, and he was staring at the house like he owned it. Grace grabbed James and ran for the back door, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She had to get to the barn, had to find Owen, had to get somewhere safe. But before she made it 3 steps, there was a pounding on the front door. "Grace!" Robert's voice, horribly familiar. "Grace, I know you are in there. You open this door right now." James started to cry, sensing his mother's fear. Grace clutched him to her chest and looked around wildly for a weapon, for anything. But she was a terrible shot, and there was no time to load the rifle anyway. Grace, if you do not open this door, I am breaking it down. You are my wife and you are coming home with me. I am not your wife, Grace shouted back, finding her voice. I was never your wife. Go away, Robert. There was a moment of silence, then a crash as Robert threw his weight against the door. The frame splintered but held. He hit it again, and this time the door burst open, hanging crooked on its hinges. Robert stepped into the house, his face twisted with rage. 2 years, he snarled. 2 years I have been looking for you. Do you have any idea what you put me through? Grace backed up, holding James tight. Stay away from me. You are my wife, you belong to me, and you are coming back to Santa Fe if I have to drag you every mile of the way. She is not going anywhere with you. Owen's voice, hard and cold. Grace looked past Robert and saw her husband standing in the doorway, rifle in hand. Behind him were Briggs and 3 other ranch hands, all armed. Robert turned, his hand moving toward his gun. This is between me and my wife. You need to step aside. She is not your wife, Owen said, his voice deadly calm. She is my wife, legally married, documented and witnessed, and you are trespassing on our property and threatening my family. So you need to leave. Now. The hell I will. She was mine first. You never married her. There is no license, no legal record. Whatever you told her, whatever ceremony you made up, it was not real. She is free and clear, and she chose me. Robert's face went purple with fury. You think I am just going to walk away? I have been looking for this woman for 2 years. She owes me. She does not owe you anything, Owen said, and now there was steel in his voice. She does not owe you a damn thing. What she does owe is a debt to herself, to be free of you, and I am here to make sure she stays that way. So I am going to give you one more chance. Get on your horse and ride out of here, and do not come back. Or we can settle this another way, and I promise you will not like how that turns out. Robert looked at Owen, then at the other armed men, then back at Grace. For a moment, Grace thought he might actually try to fight, might pull his gun and force a confrontation. But something in Owen's expression must have convinced him he was outnumbered and outmatched because he slowly raised his hands. Fine, he spat. Keep the worthless woman. She was not worth the trouble anyway. He turned and stalked out, his 2 hired men following. Grace heard them mount up and ride away, and only when the sound of hooves had faded completely did she let herself breathe again. Owen set the rifle aside and came to her, wrapping his arms around her and James both. It is over, he said. He is gone and he is not coming back. You are safe. Grace was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. He found me. He actually found me. And we sent him away. Grace, look at me. Owen gently turned her face toward his. He has no power over you. Not anymore. You are my wife. James is our son, and this is our home. He cannot take any of that away. But what if he comes back? What if he tries again? Then we will deal with him again. But I do not think he will. He saw he was outnumbered and outgunned, and men like that are cowards at heart. He will slink back to wherever he came from and tell himself he is better off without you. Owen kissed her forehead. You are free, Grace, really, truly free. Grace leaned into him, letting his strength hold her up, and slowly the shaking subsided. Owen was right. Robert had come for her and had been turned away. She had people who cared about her, people who would fight for her. She had a husband who loved her and a son who needed her and a life that was worth living. Robert could not touch any of that. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, Owen said, now and always. That night, after James was asleep and the house was secure, Grace and Owen lay in bed together, holding each other close. Grace's ear, the one that would never hear again, was pressed against the pillow, but Owen was on her right side, his voice clear and close as he talked softly about the future, about plans for expanding the house and maybe buying some land of their own someday, and raising James to be a good man. Grace listened to every word, her heart full, and thought about how far she had come. From that terrified woman who stumbled into Pecos with nothing but fear and a broken ear to this, a wife and mother with a home, and a husband who loved her enough to face her when he spoke, to adjust his whole world to accommodate her needs. That was love. That was what it was supposed to be. Thank you, she said softly, interrupting his talk about maybe getting some chickens in the spring. For what? For learning, for facing me when you speak, for making sure I can always hear you. Owen was quiet for a moment. It is such a small thing, Grace. No, she said firmly. It is not. It is everything. It is respect and kindness and love all wrapped up in one small gesture. It is you seeing me, really seeing me, and caring enough to make my life easier. That is not small. That is everything. Owen pulled her closer, his lips brushing her temple. Then I will keep doing it for the rest of our lives, because you are worth it, because I love you, because I cannot imagine a world where I do not get to talk to you and see you smile and hear you laugh. Grace felt tears on her cheeks again, but they were good tears. Happy tears. I love you so much, she said. I love you too, Owen replied, and held her until she fell asleep. Safe and warm and loved. The years that followed were good ones. James grew into a sturdy, cheerful boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's smile. Grace and Owen had two more children, a daughter named Rose when James was 3, and another son named Thomas 2 years after that. The little house on the edge of the Rockingham property expanded with them, growing new rooms and a bigger kitchen and a porch where the whole family could sit in the evenings. Owen eventually became foreman of the Rockingham when Briggs retired, a position that came with better pay and more responsibility. Grace kept cooking for the ranch hands, though now she had help from some of the younger women in town who needed work. She taught them what Mrs. Henderson had taught her, and she made sure they knew they were valued and respected because she remembered what it was like to need that. Grace's hearing never came back in her left ear. That silence remained, a permanent reminder of where she had been and what she had survived. But it did not define her. She was not the broken woman who had stumbled into Pecos all those years ago. She was Grace Zeller, wife and mother and cook and survivor, and so much more than her scars. And every single day, Owen faced her when he spoke. Every single day, he made sure she could see his mouth, positioned himself on her right side, adjusted to her needs without complaint or fanfare. It was such a small thing, he always said, but to Grace it was everything. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen took Grace back to the spot by the creek where he had proposed. The cottonwoods were bigger now, the creek running just as clear. They sat together in the grass, watching the water flow, and Owen said, "Do you remember what I promised you? That I would spend the rest of my life proving that love does not have to hurt?" "I remember," Grace said. "Do you believe it now?" Grace thought about the last 10 years. The good days and the hard days, the laughter and the tears, the 3 beautiful children sleeping back at the house, the home they had built together. She thought about how Owen had never once raised his hand to her in anger, had never made her afraid, had never been anything but patient and kind and good. She thought about how he still faced her when he spoke, every single time, without fail. "Yes," she said, "I believe it. You have proven it 1,000 times over." Owen smiled and took her hand, the same hand that wore his ring. "Good, because I am going to keep proving it for the next 10 years, and the 10 after that, and every day I have left on this earth." "I am going to hold you to that," Grace said, and kissed him there under the cottonwoods, the Texas sun warm on their faces, and the future stretching out bright and beautiful before them. 20 years after Grace first stumbled into Pecos, she stood on the porch of the house she shared with Owen and watched their children play in the yard. James was 21 now, tall and serious like his father, working the ranch and courting a girl from town. Rose was 17, smart and headstrong, with plans to become a teacher. Thomas was 15, still figuring out who he wanted to be, but showing promise as a horse trainer. Grace was 43, her hair starting to show threads of gray, her face lined from years of sun and laughter. Her left ear was still silent, but she barely noticed anymore. It was just part of who she was, no more defining than her eye color or her height. Owen came out onto the porch and slid his arm around her waist, pulling her close. He was 46 now, his hair more silver than brown, but still strong and steady and good. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. And he was facing her, always facing her, even after all these years. "About how lucky I am," Grace said. "About how different things could have been. About how grateful I am that I found you." "I am the lucky one," Owen said. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Grace Zeller." Grace leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, and watched the sun set over the Texas grassland, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere far away, maybe Robert Henley was still alive, still angry, still looking for someone to control. But it did not matter. He had no power over her. He never would again. She had built a life worth living. She had found a love worth keeping. She had 3 children who would grow up knowing what respect looked like, what kindness looked like, what real love looked like. She had survived. And more than that, she had thrived. The Wild West was a hard place, unforgiving and dangerous, but it was also a place where people could start over, could build new lives, could leave their pasts behind and become something more. Grace had done all of that. She had taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and turned it into the catalyst for the best thing. She had learned to trust again, to love again, to hope again. And every day her husband faced her when he spoke, a small gesture that meant the world. That was love. That was home. That was everything. Owen kissed the top of her head. "I love you," he said. "I love you too," Grace replied, and meant it with all her heart. The sun sank lower, the sky deepened to purple, and the first stars began to appear. Inside the house, Grace could hear Rose calling that dinner was ready, could hear Thomas and James arguing good-naturedly about something. Her family, her home, her life. She had everything she needed. She had everything she had ever wanted. She was finally, truly, completely free, and it was good. The years continued to pass in the gentle rhythm of life well lived. Grace watched her children grow and leave and start families of their own. James married his sweetheart and built a house on the Rocking M, becoming foreman after Owen decided to take a step back. Rose did become a teacher, running the schoolhouse in Pecos with a firm hand and a kind heart. Thomas trained horses and had a gift for it, becoming known throughout West Texas for his skill. Grace and Owen grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They became grandparents, then great-grandparents, the little house always full of visiting family and laughter and life. Grace's hair went white, and Owen's joints ached in the cold, but they still sat on the porch every evening, holding hands and watching the sunset. And Owen still faced her when he spoke. One evening, when Grace was 67 and Owen was 70, they sat together as they always did, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill. Owen turned to her, his weathered face serious, and said, "Grace, I need you to know something." "What is that?" Grace asked. "Every day I have spent with you has been a gift. Every single day. You are the love of my life, the best part of me, and I am so grateful I got to spend my life proving to you that love can be good and kind and true. I am grateful for our children and our grandchildren and this life we built. I am grateful for it all." Grace felt tears prick her eyes. "Owen Zeller, are you getting sentimental in your old age?" "Maybe," Owen said with a small smile. "Or maybe I just want to make sure you know, in case I do not get to tell you again." "You will tell me again," Grace said firmly. "Tomorrow evening and the evening after that, and 100 more evenings after that. You are not going anywhere." "I hope you are right," Owen said, and kissed her hand. Grace was right. Owen told her again the next evening, and the evening after that. He told her for 5 more years, until he was 75, and his heart finally gave out one night in his sleep, Grace beside him as she had been for 45 years. Grace mourned him with all her heart, but she did not break. She had learned long ago that she was stronger than she looked, more resilient than anyone expected. She missed Owen every single day, missed his voice and his touch and the way he always faced her when he spoke. But she had their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and she had the life they had built together, and that was enough. Grace Zeller lived to be 82 years old. She died peacefully in her sleep in the little house on the edge of the Rockingham, surrounded by family, her left ear still silent, but her heart full of love and joy and gratitude for the life she had lived. And if anyone ever asked her children or grandchildren about her, they would say the same thing, that Grace Zeller was the strongest woman they ever knew, that she survived things that would have broken other people, that she built a life worth living out of nothing but determination and hope, and that she was loved, deeply and truly loved, by a good man who learned to face her when he spoke, and who proved every day that love does not have to hurt. That was her story. That was her legacy. And it was a good one.